Welcome to TypeScript FM, the friendly podcast for TypeScript developers where we bring you news, updates, and interviews from the community with plenty of tomfoolery sprinkled in. I'm your host, Kamran Ayub, and I'm joined by my co-host and best bud, Erik Onerheim. Together, we're the two TypeScript fools. Welcome to the show.
Why, hello, everyone. Welcome. Today, we're doing news for the week of June 23rd, 2025.
Woohoo!
How you doing?
I'm doing great. How are you?
I'm doing okay. I have had a busy week in like a good way.
Oh, that's good. Me too. What'd you do?
Well, instead of doing anything productive one day, I just upgraded my NeoVim to the latest, V11, 0.11.2. And I have a link to my NeoVim config if you want to live my life with me.
Nice. Was there any new features or something? Why'd you upgrade?
Speed.
Okay.
It's already NeoVim's already lightning fast, so speed plus. They also made a lot of improvements to the LSP, a built-in LSP stuff. So a lot of stuff you don't need plugins for anymore. It's just built into NeoVim. So my NeoVim config actually got smaller. So that's pretty cool.
Yeah, that's really neat.
And then Excalibur had a lot of updates. We finally merged a few PRs, and we had our first contributor maintainer board meeting.
Yeah,
which is pretty cool.
That was cool.
I got my birthday gift to myself was I bought a new microphone. So I've been having a heck of a time with this one. So I'm changing. So my voice will sound different soon.
Yeah, it's probably a good thing. I'm sure listeners are tired of the audio issues that we've been having. It should have been mostly good in the last few episodes because we did adjust your setup so that it's better right now. But I think hopefully with your new mic, it's going to be even better.
Yeah. So what have you been up to?
Oh, well, we had a bunch of storms this past week, so that wasn't as fun. So we didn't do a ton outside, but we did do some things. We woke up early one day and we went strawberry picking at a nearby farm.
Oh, fun.
Yeah, that was a lot of fun. And so we got 2 or 3 pounds of strawberries.
It's a lot of strawberries.
It is, but the kids love eating them, so we're probably already half done with them. And we're going to make some cookies or do some strawberry cake or something like that to use up the rest. And then my youngest had a balanced bike race over the weekend, and she did one earlier this month, and so this was her second one. So she had a lot of fun. And while we were out and about, me and her were biking together, and she went down a hill a bit too fast, and so she crashed and burned. But
ouch.
Yeah, luckily she was fine. She was obviously wearing her helmet and everything. So we brought her in, and the doctor said, no, she seems to be doing okay. And where she got hit, she just developed a little bump and a scrape, and he said that was the best place that she could have gotten hit. So didn't cause any damage or anything. Just some flesh wounds. It's just a flesh wound.
Yeah, it always hurts to see kiddos.
Yeah, you don't like it. I mean, obviously we were freaking out when it happened, but just to go in and just have the doctor say, "Yep, she's okay." I mean, that was good.
Yeah.
Otherwise, just finishing the playthrough tracking feature for Keep Track My Games. Man, I'm on the tail end of it where I'm tracking completions because I've got the whole playthrough tracking where you can track your time, each play session. But then once you're done with the game, you want to mark it as complete. But that's a whole separate data structure and workflow for marking a game as complete. So I'm trying to finish that up. And once I get that done, the whole end-to-end tracking experience will be finished, and I can ship it to early access to my patron users, have them test it a few more rounds, and then I can make it generally available. So that's pretty exciting. And then, of course, this next week, we're traveling. We're doing our big road trip, our big summer trip. So we're just preparing for that, and I'm very excited. How about that?
We do like a road trip here. I'm excited for when Maeve can handle being in the car a little longer.
Yeah.
We get 2.5 hours is kind of the max that
she'll
tolerate.
Yeah, and these drives are much longer. We have to go 8 hours or something for the first day, but the kids are pretty good with that nowadays.
Yeah, that's good.
Yep. Ready for some news?
Some news.
What's the headliner?
The headliner today is that ECMAScript 2025 is a thing now. It has been approved on June 25th.
Sweet.
So that's super nice. And our friend Dr. Axel has a great explainer about all of the new features with example code. So I'll encourage you all to take a look at that. And if you don't remember, we've talked about a few of these features, but now these are official.
Mm-hmm.
So now you have import attributes, and this is that, import thing from some JSON file with type JSON. That's the only one that's spec'd right now, as far as I know. There are like non-standard implementations already in other runtimes, like with text to like get raw text out without like a bundler. And then there's further endeavors to add more import attribute types that might be useful to you. There's also iterator helper methods that let you do kind of functional things. So it's the things that you know and love on arrays. It's filter map, flat map, sum, every, find, reduce, for each, those kind of things.
Okay.
Are now available. Some unique things to iterators are drop, take, and toArray, but these are all new things. We've also talked about sets. They're super useful. There's now set methods, so you can do like intersection and difference and a few other set methods. Those are super cool. There's RegEx escape. So if you don't want to get redosed, maybe take a look at that one. That looks pretty cool. There's Promise.try, which I talked about last episode in my cool things. Support for 16-bit floating point numbers is also a thing. This is kind of a big deal for like GPU stuff, like packing data tighter and tighter so you can do more with less. Less precision. And there's a lot more to talk about there, but I'll just stop it there. And there's just a ton of really cool stuff. You should go take a look at it. It's awesome.
Yeah, and you should also pick up Dr. Axel's book, Exploring JavaScript, because he recently updated it for ECMAScript 2025.
That's right.
Awesome. We've got another kind of a big headliner announcement. Vite 7 is out. So the thing with Vite 7 is that there's not like a ton of new major features, but a lot of the underlying toolchain has been updated and deprecated. So for example, Node 18 is now deprecated, so you can't use Node 18 with Vite 7, so you have to be using one of the latest LTSs. So, and then we did talk about this a little bit recently. They updated the browser baseline to widely available. So you can read more about what exactly that's going to do. But it basically updates the baseline targets for the supported versions for browsers. So like, for example, Chrome 87 is now going to be 107, is going to be the default browser compatibility. Similarly, Edge 88 to Edge 107, Firefox 78 to 104, and Safari 14 to Safari 16. So they say that this is going to make compatibility more predictable for future releases. So that's cool. We already covered the latest VTest release, so Vite 7 is now supported in that. So you can go check that one out. That is in VTest 3.2. And then we talked about the environment API before. They've added a new API called Build App that lets plugins coordinate the building of environments. And there is a blog post or guide on how to use that if that's up your alley. The environment API is still experimental because the ecosystem is still trying to figure out how to implement everything, but hopefully that will get stable pretty soon. And then that's basically it. So it should be a really smooth upgrade from Vite 6 to Vite 7, so there shouldn't be really any surprises, I don't think.
Yeah, I think the three big things to look out for is if you're using the legacy SaaS stuff, that's going to be removed. And there are two features that have been removed. There's the split vendor chunk plugin that's removed. You can use the build rollup output manual chunks to do chunking behavior. And then the hook level enforce transform for transform index HTML has been removed as well. Order should be used instead of the enforce, and handler should be used instead of the transform.
Okay. There's no roll down Vite support in 7.0. It's still a separate package. So if you do want to try out the roll down Vite, you have to install the roll down -Vite package instead of the default Vite package. So they're still continuing to iterate on that. But just so we're clear, the roll down is not part of the Vite 7 major release. So once that stabilizes, I'm sure it'll be in Vite 8 or 9. The other thing that they announced was that ViteConf is going to be in person. So that's going to be in Amsterdam on October 9th through 10th. So instead of meeting virtually, you get to meet in real life. So that would be kind of cool.
Yeah. And now Node 24.3 and 22.17, the LTS version, now have removed the experimental warning for type stripping. Get no more scary messages. It is now a thing for reals.
So maybe your DevOps engineers are like, why are you using this experimental thing? Oh, but it's not experimental. It's stable. So they finally removed that warning now.
An update on the Oracle v. Deno trademark dispute.
Mm-hmm.
Some sad news. The Trademark Trial and Appeal Board, TTAB, dismissed the fraud claim against Oracle, which is, as a space lawyer, I disagree with. And Ryan Dahl's blog post also disagrees with. Kind of a bummer because they submitted a picture of the Node.js website as evidence. But I think there's a mens rea requirement, like that you have to prove that they knowingly submitted fraudulent. And like that, I think is super hard to prove. I don't know if that's true or not. I'm a space lawyer, remember. So now the case is going to move pretty quickly, according to the blog post. They're going to be going at the genericness and abandonment of the JavaScript trademark, air quotes.
Mm-hmm.
So on August 7th, Oracle must respond to all of the claims. And then I think discovery begins September 6th. So hopefully JavaScript is freed from the clutches of Oracle. So one can hope. And there was a real Mastodon toot. We should just call it the language formerly known as Prince script. And I thought that was pretty funny. That made me cackle.
Yep. That's like a Minnesota joke.
Yeah, that's a deep cut Minnesota joke.
Love it. We've got a new Astro minor release. So last time we covered Astro 5.9. Well, like a week later, 5.10 dropped. And in that one, responsive images are now stable. But the big feature is a new experimental one called Live Content Collections, which lets you fetch content at runtime instead of only at build time. And I'll just link to a blog post that dives deeper into that. So if you're in the Astro ecosystem, I think that's going to be a pretty big deal for you. So you might want to check that out. TypeScript FM is sponsored by Excalibur.js, the friendly TypeScript game engine for the web. Like many of you, I got into computers because I loved video games and dreamed of making one, but game development always felt a bit intimidating. Instead, I built a career in web development, though that dream of making games never really went away. Then I met Erik, who showed me I could use my HTML, CSS, and JavaScript skills to create games with just a bit of game design knowledge and the right engine. Excalibur.js makes game development approachable, offering everything you need to build 2D web games. Arcade physics, sprites, animations, input support, and integrations with tools like Tiled and Asprite. It's beginner-friendly, yet flexible enough to grow with you. Our team has published 10 games using Excalibur, all written in TypeScript. If you're a web developer looking to dip your toes into game dev or sharpen your TypeScript skills, give Excalibur.js a try at excalibur.js.com. Click the big tutorial button to start building your first game, Excalibur, a Flappy Bird clone. After that, join our friendly Discord community of web developers who love to help each other and share game dev tips. All right, community highlights. We have like a large community highlights section for this episode. It wasn't like too much like big news, but a lot of community highlights. So why don't I just start out with a few Reddit posts that I saw. One is called 6 Advanced TypeScript Tricks. Say that 10 times fast. By OlegWock. And he covers these 6 tricks. Conditional types, infer, hot script, which is new to me, distributive types, nominal types, assert unreachable, utility function, and types performance. So I think a couple takeaways here, and you can read the full post because it's a great post. Hot script is like a separate types programming tool. So you can do type programming where you can like do meta stuff. And I think we've covered like a few different other meta framework libraries, but his favorite is hot script. So you can take a look at that. And then we've already talked a bit about nominal types, like branded types. And then the assert unreachable utility function is a way to do exhaustiveness checking, like with switch statements, but his example is actually in an if-else statement, so you can use it there with that branching logic. And then for types performance, we haven't really talked too much about types performance. I think it would be fun to do like a deep dive episode on that, but we have to find an expert on types performance. So if you know somebody, we should certainly talk about that. But the big takeaway there is that one of the quantifiable metrics is type instantiations. And so I'm just quoting from the blog post. Instantiation is when TypeScript takes some generic type and creates its instance with certain type arguments or a combination of applied. So more instantiations leads to more types, which leads to more work for the compiler to do. So if you can reduce type instantiations, that's going to speed up your compiler performance.
And if I'm not mistaken, I think this was one of the optimizations that Zod4 did.
Okay.
Reduce type instantiations.
Cool. Yeah, so it would be fun to do a deeper dive episode on that because I've done a little bit of types performance stuff, but that was a while ago. Anyway, TypeScript stuff I wish I knew earlier is another popular post on Reddit. There was a lot of comments on this one, so you might want to take a look at the comment section. But the 3 things that the OP said was, first, don't overtype everything. Let the compiler infer. It's smarter than you think. Avoid enum unless you really need it. Union types are usually cleaner. And then the third one is never ignores with as any. That's just JavaScript in disguise. So they say you should learn how generics work. It'll unlock 80% of advanced patterns. If you're actually looking for a way to learn generics, the type challenges repo, which is something that we've mentioned before, is a great way. A Redditor said that's the way to become a generic god, is to take those type challenges. And really, we should do a deep dive episode on generics too, because I do think that's one of the hardest parts to learn. The other thing is, it was interesting to see that there's a pretty healthy debate in the comments about when you should, there are people on the side of the fence that like to type everything, and versus other people who prefer to let the compiler infer more. And so I think that there's a nice in-between where you type the boundaries of like methods. So you for example, method parameters, and maybe the return type of a method is where you should use explicit typing, because that's kind of the quote unquote public API of your code that other parts of your code are going to use. But internally within the method, you don't have to be so explicit and overtype everything, because I do think there is a balance of maintainability and flexibility, because if you let the compiler infer, then it lets the types flow through, but there are boundaries where you might not want that to happen and you want to be explicit. So I don't know, where do you fall? What side of the fence do you fall on, Erik?
Yeah, I think for me, I, as a library author, want to be super explicit about my types because I want the because if you're not, it's really easy for you to accidentally break a contract.
Yeah.
So in that way, I think in library code, I would probably flip the script and overtype everything. But in app code, definitely not. I think that's in app code, I think you let the compiler do its thing, and I think you'll be much happier. But in library code, I flip the script on that one, mostly because I want to know if I'm breaking something, and it's too easy to accidentally not return all paths or return something that the type isn't expecting, and you return a null or something. And then if you let it infer it, then it's oh, it returns this type or null. You've suddenly introduced a breaking change into the library.
Yeah, that's a good point, because as a library author, you care a lot about breaking changes. So, and the types are an API, right? They're just another layer to your public API. So when those types change for consumers, that's a breaking change. So we do want to be explicit there. But within application code, you can be a little bit more loosey-goosey, because then it's more of what is your team's capacity for maintainability? And then it's kind of up to the team, what parts of your code, maybe should be explicit. When we worked on a mono repo, we had shared packages, and we would type most of the stuff in there because those were public packages essentially to our consumers. But within our internal platform code, we would be more apt to cast things to unknown or things like that, just to get around things, because that was internal. to us. So I think it definitely depends on the context where your TypeScript code is being used. Sweet. Another library watch, zap-socket, is a TypeScript-first abstraction over WebSockets. And so there's a blog post that accompanies this, and it's my attempt at fixing WebSockets. It's pretty cool. They've created like an async awaitable API over WebSockets. It's fully typed on both the client and the server using Zod. So I think if you have worked with the WS package before, you would probably really enjoy working with this, especially if you're a TypeScript developer. So I would definitely check that out if you're doing a lot of WebSocket stuff.
I think the next time I reach for WebSockets, I'm going to try this out.
Yeah.
Because I think I was using, it's all stringly typed when I was doing it, and it was very sad.
Yeah.
Next up, Dr. Axel is getting another shout out. He has a great blog post on tips for making regular expressions easier in JavaScript. And the two things that I'm going to pull out, he's got a lot of them, a lot of tips, but the two things I'm going to pull out is he uses a library called RegEx Plus that allows you to do white space and comments in your regexes, which chef's kiss we need, because damn, are those regexes like arcane and difficult to parse if you didn't write them, or if you wrote them like a year ago and then you have to come back to it. And then the other thing that I think is important is to write unit tests for your regular expressions. So those are the two things that I think I'm going to pull out of his blog post. I would go and read it some more. It's got a lot of good tips for making these things not a pain.
I guess I didn't realize that you couldn't add comments and white space to JavaScript regular expressions by default.
There is a proposal for it.
Okay.
Well, I think, let's see what stage it is in. It's going to be the /x flag in the proposal. Let me pull it up. And it is in stage 1. So I would love this to be a thing for us to be able to do comments in our regular expressions.
I guess I've been spoiled by .NET, which allows you to do that. Awesome. For our functional programming friends, I think you have a Blue Sky thread.
Yeah. So Blue Sky user, I'm gonna butcher your name. I'm really sorry. Kanishka Naik has a whole bunch of examples of doing functional programming in TypeScript. So if you're like a functional type person, they have an example doing algebraic data types, ADTs by some. They have another one talking about monoids and semigroups, which I don't know what that means. They have pattern matching, which I think we all have taken a look at it. And what's really interesting here is it's using the TypeScript type narrowing to do like Rust style pattern matching, which is pretty neat. They have lazy evaluation using generators, which I am a big fan of generators. It's, code routines are the best routines, I say. Next up, I have another Blue Sky post from Blue Sky user Nico, and they have just a good reminder of how to use never in an exhaustive switch case. So it's always good to remember that you can do exhaustive checks so that if you ever hit the default case, and you should never hit the default case, to make that visible to your type system.
I like how they are able to do it without introducing another function.
That's right.
Yeah.
And the way that they do it is they do like in the default case, they do const exhaustive check : never, and they try to assign the switch value through. And that will cause that assignment, because you can never assign to never, to fail in your type system. And then they throw an error for the JavaScript runtime. Yep. So like if that ever happens. So
yeah, I think that's pretty clever.
Yeah. I actually used that today in my code.
That's awesome. In the first blog post I mentioned the 6 advanced TypeScript tricks. They introduce a assert unreachable utility function where you can do something like that. But if you don't want to introduce another function, this is a really nice, succinct way to do it.
Yeah, it's super cool. And I think if you did that utility function, I think it just takes a parameter of type never.
It does, yep.
So if it's ever reachable, it's an error, which I think is pretty cool. Neat trick. Next up, some work in Deno is happening where they're going to add, remember those new import assertions like with type JSON? Well, they're adding with type text and with type bytes. So this should be in Deno 2.4. It's not there yet, but you'll be able to read in raw text or raw bytes from a file, which is going to be super useful for people like me that likes to read in native formats. Blue Sky user Cinnabon had a great post related to that. You know how we have that with type JSON now. You know, it would be really awesome as if when you did that, it also like would give you an as const. Well, there's a really interesting thread here about ways around that to like get that behavior. Because a lot of times when you're importing JSON, it's like a configuration file and it's not going to change, right? So you really want that as const so that all of like your properties, so like say you have a version property that is at 1.0, you want it to be like as like typed as 1.0, not as string. So there's some really interesting ways to do this. One really creative solution in a TypeScript issue was using the TypeScript compiler to produce declaration files for the JSON, which I thought was really creative. I wouldn't have thought to do that. And the way that I do it, like the way that we've done it for like games and stuff for like configuration, is we just put JSON in a TypeScript file and then as constant. So it's not technically JSON. It is TypeScript, but we treat it like JSON. It's a config file.
Right.
So that's how we solve that problem.
Yeah, so would this be something that TypeScript itself would have to implement? Because the as const is definitely a TypeScriptism.
Yeah.
So it looks like there's an open issue for this maybe?
Yeah. There's some discussion here that it hasn't been closed, but it would be really cool if we could do something like this. So poke, Microsoft, this would be a cool feature, especially for like JSON configuration files. And I think, JSON files, if you're importing them from disk, will never change. So this feels like question mark low hanging, but maybe not. Maybe it's not.
There could be some edge cases we're not thinking of.
Yeah. Clearly, I don't think of edge cases. And then the last thing I have, which is the thing I didn't know that ArkType did, is you can do branded types with ArkType by doing a special like DSL thing. So when you're defining your type in ArkType, you do like, for example, say you want a branded ID. Well, your underlying type is maybe a number. You can do number hash ID, and it'll emit a branded type with ID as the brand, which is pretty neat.
Yeah, that's really neat.
I have a link to that, and I had no idea they did that, and I thought it was really neat.
Yeah, we definitely want to do a deep dive episode into ArkType because that is something I've been hearing a lot about, and I really love how it's like one-to-one. So like when you read an ArkType type, you're basically just reading a TypeScript type, which is super cool.
Yeah. Pretty neat. Moving on to cool links, I wanted to tack on to my conversation about Promise.try last week, and I think I implied that Promise.try, or I might even said it, that it doesn't hit the microtask queue. Is what I should say is it might not, under the hood, hit the microtask queue, but it still must respect microtask semantics for the ECMAScript spec. So you can't just like not do the thing that the browser's expecting.
Well, the way I heard you say it, I'm pretty sure you said this, is that if the function is synchronous, it does not need to be queued onto the microtask queue, so it won't be. But if it does return a promise and it is asynchronous, then it will just do the same path it always does, which it gets queued onto the microtask queue. Is that right?
That's mostly right.
Okay.
And I think I didn't explain it very well, but the idea is it always respects the semantics. Whether or not under the hood it's queued is completely opaque to us. So
interesting.
Chrome V8 can do optimizations if it's like an immediately resolved promise. So like the underlying VM can decide, I don't need to do extra work. I can do some stuff JavaScript doesn't need to know as long as I respect the spec.
Okay. So this is more of a VM implementation.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So I guess that makes sense, because at what level does the microtask queue work?
Yeah, so that works outside of JavaScript, right? Because that's a runtime feature.
Okay.
Well, I mean, it's implemented in the runtime. It is in the spec for JavaScript, but it's implemented by the runtime. So I went so as far as to go and dump the bytecode for like Promise.try versus like Promise.resolve, and it's identical bytecode as far as like V8 is concerned. So under the hood, there's something else going on.
Mm-hmm.
It's still doing the opcodes to build the async await generator, but under the hood, V8 might be able to be like, this is immediately resolved. I can do something special. But
Gotcha.
As far as the bytecode is concerned, it looks identical.
Okay. Okay, that's cool. Well, that's a nice little deep dive there.
Yeah. Yeah. A couple cool links that I'll touch on briefly is Mitchell Hashimoto had a really great talk on testing that blew my mind. And, it's really addressing those things that you kind of throw out and say, oh, this can't be tested. And the premise of the talk is it can't be tested yet. And he has a lot of really cool strategies for testing things that you might have thought were untestable before. So I really recommend watching that.
Is there one little peek you can give us?
One thing that kind of tickled my brain was talking about GPU testing and how actually shaders are basically a pure math function. So you should be able to test them, but almost no one does. And there's not any tool for it and no literature around it. So he pioneered a way of doing it. And he's got a prototype, which I thought was really neat.
That is cool. Yeah.
Jake Archibald was on Shop Talk recently, and he talked about why we don't have HTML imports. And I think it's really interesting discussion about how not to break the web and kind of the thought process behind standards. Because my naive thinking is well, it's easy. And then you start digging in, and then he goes through with the hosts and digs into all of the problems, both security and security problems with HTML imports, and also performance problems, and also oh, this is going to break people, older websites. So very interesting stuff. I really recommend listening to that show. I'll have a link to that. And then exciting news, PNG3 is a thing. And, mostly just, codifies EXIF data, because that was kind of a de facto thing that was already in the wild. It codifies animated PNGs, which were already a thing, cleans up some of the spec, but it also has proper HDR support. So you can now have high dynamic range images with some future proofing so that as things expand and we have different color gamuts, we can do stuff in the future. So that's pretty cool. So PNG3 is a thing.
That PNG is pretty much lossless, right?
Yeah. PNG is lossless, it makes it suitable for it's usually what we use for games. Now there are other tricks you can play. And sometimes a JPEG is fine, right? And the way that JPEGs work is they use math to find patterns in your image, and then use those patterns to compress the image. But it is lossy in that way because there is a fixed number of patterns that can exist in the JPEG spec, and that's how it compresses. Is all of these patterns are known a priori by everyone, and that's how it does the compression.
Yeah, that's cool.
One of the ways.
Cool. I have a couple cool links. If you've ever wanted to invite an owl or a falcon to join your Zoom meeting, you can definitely do it through Raptor Zoomies, which is offered by the Raptor Center at the University of Minnesota.
I love this.
Yeah. So, you could use it for a work meeting, or we could record a TypeScript FM episode with an owl. I don't know what we would do with that, but it might be funny. But anyway, there's probably plenty of use cases where you might want to just do that for fun for a work event or something. And it doesn't cost a whole lot of money. I think it's $60 to $75 or something like that. And obviously it has the trainer or the person that is, can hold the owl or focus on them or whatever. But otherwise the owl is attending your Zoom meetings. That was fun.
The picture here is great. It's like an eagle screaming at a screen.
Yeah. Yep, exactly. And then the other thing I just wanted to highlight as a cool link, a lot of Node.js is built by a super diverse community, including those from the LGBTQ community. And so for Pride Month, Node.js is posting a series to highlight those community members and all their contributions to the Node.js ecosystem. So I think that's really, really cool. And you should definitely go check out the blog post. It's titled Open Sourced Identity. And they talk a bit about that as an introduction. So be on the lookout for those. And as they come up, we will put them into the community highlights section once they are released.
Excellent. Well, I think that's a show.
That is a show.
Well, you have a good one. Stay frosty.
Hi, everyone. This is Kamran. I just wanted to thank you for listening to the show, and we hope you enjoyed the episode. If you want to see the show notes, you can check your podcast player or go to typescript.fm, where you'll see a list of all the episodes. If you enjoyed the show, tell your friends and please rate it on Apple Podcasts or Spotify because that's how the show grows and gets discovered by more people. If you want to suggest news or a project that should be covered or just want to say hi, email us at feedback@typescript.fm. If you want to follow us on social, we're both active on Blue Sky. I'm at comronicus.com and Erik is at ericonerheim.com. You can also follow the show directly at typescript.fm.